The alien broadcast began with laughter, sharp, metallic, echoing through every human channel as if the speakers themselves were mocking Earth. The footage showed 3 alien patrol officers dancing around a captured human rifle, dodging its slow simulation round with exaggerated theatrics. Their commander, a tall, blade-limbed officer with a shining crest, tapped the weapon with amused contempt. "This," he announced, "is what the soft-bodied hunters call precision. If this is their best, we fear no challenge." The patrol erupted in more laughter, and the transmission ended with a taunt sent directly to Earth. "Send your finest. We will return him in pieces." The message ignited fury across the planet. Social networks raged. Military boards lit up with tactical speculation, and civilian broadcasts demanded an answer. Humanity had been humiliated before, but this was deliberate provocation, a targeted insult to a culture shaped by struggle and survival. For a species that had learned patience from decades of conflict and resilience from centuries of hardship, the aliens' mockery felt like a wound pressed deep into collective pride. In a quiet rainforest compound far from the uproar, Kael watched the broadcast without blinking. His face remained still, unreadable beneath the smeared streaks of mud he used instead of paint. To the world, he was known only by myth and whisper. Ghost Viper, a sniper whose missions were spoken of with a reverence once reserved for legends. To his commanders, he was a final measure, a weapon humanity kept buried until provoked beyond toleration. And to himself, he was simply a man who understood distance. Distance between breath and shot, between target and consequence, between anger and action. As the broadcast ended, he replayed the final taunt, absorbing every word, every mocking gesture, every careless display of arrogance. Zach did not react with rage. Instead, he felt a familiar steadiness settle over him, the calm that arrived only when a new mission took shape in his mind. He stood from the moss-covered platform, where he had been adjusting his rifle, and walked toward the small communication terminal perched between 2 massive roots. The holographic projection of Command Director Rios appeared before he initiated the call. "You've seen it," Rios said, skipping greetings. Her voice was crisp, but tension sharpened its edges. "They're daring us to respond publicly." Zach wiped a streak of water from his arm. "You want to respond quietly." Rios nodded. "A single strike. Surgical. Symbolic." Their commander made himself the face of their mockery. "We want you to make him the face of our answer." Zach listened to the mission details. Insertion into alien territory, a hostile jungle world used as a patrol base, a ceremonial platform where the alien commander would perform another broadcast within 40 hours. The challenge was steep: alien shields, dense vegetation, unfamiliar wildlife, and orbital surveillance. But Zach absorbed the information without hesitation. "They believe we can't reach them," Rios finished. "They think our precision is primitive." Zach lifted his rifle and began checking the chamber. "Then they misunderstand our patience." Rios exhaled, relief softening her stance. "We deploy you in 6 hours. No support team. No backup. You'll be alone. I always am." The projection flickered away, leaving the rainforest's constant hum to fill the silence. Zach slung his rifle and walked back into the foliage, letting the shadows swallow him. Everything around him seemed to steady. His heartbeat, his breathing, the shifting weight of the mission taking its place within him. The aliens wanted Earth's best without understanding what that truly meant. He paused beneath a curtain of vines, listening to the distant rain, and allowed one quiet thought to surface. They mocked the wrong species. And with that, the hunt began. Zach emerged from the drop pod with deliberate calm, landing knee-deep in warm, murky water that clung to him like a second skin. The alien jungle pressed close from every direction, its canopy swallowing light and dripping it in fractured beams across the swamp. He inhaled slowly, adjusting to the dense air that carried a faint metallic tang. The environment was hostile, but it spoke a language he understood. Stay small, stay quiet, stay patient. Each step sank with a sluggish pull, yet he moved with practiced ease, distributing weight so the water barely rippled. His ghillie suit shifted in tone, absorbing greens and browns from the vegetation. The suit never made him invisible by itself. It only extended the discipline he carried within. Camouflage without restraint was useless, but paired with silence, it became a weapon. The alien patrol routes projected by command had been accurate so far. Zack noticed the subtle signs: broken reeds, displaced mud, the faintest chemical residue marking where armored boots had passed earlier. He crouched near a patch of glowing fungus and traced the prints, noting their spacing. The aliens walked with confidence, believing technology rendered them superior. That arrogance created patterns, and patterns created openings. He pressed forward until the swamp shallowed into gnarled roots thick enough to walk across. Above him, translucent insects drifted in lazy spirals. Zack ignored them, focusing instead on the distant hum of a patrol skimmer. The engine's rhythm trembled through the ground. He knelt, identified the direction of travel, then moved away to avoid crossing its path. When he climbed onto a broad root system, he froze. Less than 30 meters ahead, an alien scout stood beside a monitoring beacon, its armor reflecting faint pulses of violet light. The scout appeared irritated, tapping its claws against the console. Zack remained perfectly still, letting his breath flatten until he seemed part of the tree itself. The scout never glanced his way. After a few tense seconds, it deactivated the beacon and moved off, unaware of how close it had been to death. Zack waited, then descended from the roots. A confrontation here would have been reckless. Eliminating the scout risked alerting the entire outpost, and the mission demanded precision, not escalation. His goal was singular: reach the alien commander who mocked Earth and deliver an answer no one could misinterpret. The terrain shifted as he moved deeper, the trees rising taller and the swamp narrowing into ridges of moss-covered soil. Between two trunks, he spotted the faint gleam of alloy, a communications tower erected above the canopy. The ceremonial platform couldn't be far. The aliens would use it to project another broadcast, confident in their dominance and blind to the danger approaching. Zack's breathing leveled into a familiar rhythm as he advanced. Each meter he crossed sharpened his focus. The aliens had mocked humanity's precision because they mistook it for simplicity, unaware that discipline itself was power. He approached the edge of a rising slope and crouched to study the path ahead. Beyond the next ridge lay the outskirts of the ceremonial grounds. The commander would arrive soon, armored and arrogant, expecting applause from his soldiers. Zack tightened his grip on his rifle. He felt the familiar shift inside himself, the quiet narrowing of thought that always signaled he was entering the final approach. Nothing existed now except terrain, timing, and the target ahead. The jungle's noise faded into a low hum as he aligned his purpose with every careful movement he made toward the ridge. Zack settled into position long before the alien commander arrived, molding himself into the terrain until he became indistinguishable from the mossy ridge. The air was thick with drifting spores, each glowing faintly as if suspended in slow-moving starlight. He ignored their shimmer, narrowing his awareness to the natural curvature of the land and the precise line of sight he needed. Every adjustment he made was minimal, nothing wasted, nothing excessive. The ground beneath him pulsed with distant machinery, a reminder that time was collapsing toward confrontation. Below the ridge, alien soldiers assembled around the ceremonial platform, their movements sharp but unhurried. Their armor caught the dim jungle light, scattering it into brief, liquid flashes. Zack studied their formation, calculating the spacing between them, the angles of their visors, the vulnerability hidden behind their confidence. He could read posture the way others read language. The aliens carried themselves like creatures certain of superiority. That certainty made them slow to anticipate the improbable. A sudden stir rippled through the crowd as the commander arrived, elevated on a gliding platform. His crest, polished to a blinding sheen, rose high above the others. Zack recognized him instantly from the broadcast. Even now, The commander radiated the same theatrical arrogance, raising his arms to invite attention. The soldiers answered with a chorus of mechanical cheers, their voices blending into a metallic chant that vibrated against the trees. Zack exhaled, letting the sound wash past him. The shot he prepared required more than accuracy. The alien shields flickered in layered harmonics, each oscillation designed to disperse incoming energy or deflect projectile force. But repetition bred opportunity. By watching long enough, he recognized a narrow fluctuation, a fractional dip occurring every few seconds. It was small enough to escape most sensors, but large enough for someone patient enough to anticipate it. The commander began speaking, his voice amplified by the surrounding towers. Humans, he declared, have sent no challenger. Their silence confirms their fear. Laughter rose from the soldiers, a harsh, grating amusement that rolled across the clearing. Zack observed their mockery without any emotional spike. For him, anger had no place in the moment. Emotion created tremors. Tremors broke precision. He steadied his breathing and lifted the rifle, aligning the target not by the commander's predictable movements, but by the rhythm of his shield modulation. Every living creature had a cadence, breath, speech, motion, pride. The commander's was bloated with certainty. Zack let the crosshairs settle, then paused, waiting for the harmonics to slide open like a brief parting of armor plates. The moment appeared with mathematical clarity. Zack's finger tightened. The rifle released a muted pulse, barely audible, more vibration than sound. The projectile slipped into the air with deceptive gentleness, carving an almost invisible arc through mist and drifting spores. The world held still for one suspended heartbeat. Then the commander staggered. Shock rippled across the platform as the shield flared violently, unable to repel what should have been impossible. The commander's crest dimmed, and he collapsed with a clang, the echo snapping the soldiers out of their routine arrogance. Panic erupted instantly. Voices cracked in a shrill confusion. Sensors activated in frantic bursts, scanning every direction for an intruder they could not conceive had infiltrated so deeply. Zack didn't linger on the kill. His mission was never about celebration. He chambered a second round, striking a hanging cluster of swollen pods on a nearby branch. They burst, releasing a torrent of slick vines that whipped downward, tangling two soldiers and dragging them into the muck. The aliens screamed orders, their discipline disintegrating into chaos. Zack withdrew, sliding backward with fluid control. He knew reinforcements would come, and he needed distance before their technology compensated for shock. As he melted back into the thicket, one truth pulsed steady in his mind. The aliens had witnessed a correction, a reminder carved with precision. Humanity was not afraid. It was patient. Zack moved through the undergrowth with a precision shaped by decades of discipline, each footfall silent against the damp soil. Behind him, the clearing had erupted into bedlam, shouts, alarms, and the frantic whine of scanners sweeping through the trees. He did not need to look back to know the aliens were scrambling to reassemble their fractured confidence. Their commander lay motionless, their formation shattered, and their certainty replaced by a fear they had never expected to feel. He slipped deeper into the jungle, letting its shadows fold around him like a familiar cloak. The first hunter-killer drone arrived moments later, its thrusters vibrating through the canopy. Zack recognized its pattern instantly. Impatient, aggressive, designed to overwhelm rather than outmaneuver. He pressed himself against the trunk of a massive root tree, its ridged bark absorbing his silhouette. The drone spotlight tore across the swamp, slicing through fog and spores before settling on a direction opposite his retreat. Its operators were nervous, chasing ghosts where none existed. Still, he waited, knowing fear tended to make enemies unpredictable. The drone circled twice, then darted toward the ridge in an erratic sweep. Zack inhaled, assessed its angle of approach, and flicked a polished shard of root bark into a cluster of reeds several meters ahead. The sound was subtle, but sharp enough to divert the drone's sensors. It pivoted abruptly, firing into the reeds with a crack of heat and static. The energy backlash ignited the underbrush, creating a brief, blinding flare. Zack used the distraction to vault over a fallen limb and slip beneath a collapsed tree hollow. The drone surged toward the fire, unable to detect his absence. He continued moving, aware that the aliens' panic would soon give way to structured pursuit. Their initial confusion was an advantage, but it wouldn't last. Once they regained composure, they would widen their perimeter and comb the jungle with analytical precision. Zack guided his retreat along a winding path where the swamp deepened. He knelt at the water's edge, allowing his suit's camouflage to merge with the surrounding muck. Submerging himself to the shoulders, he dragged a thick mat of floating moss over his torso. The water muffled every vibration except the steady drum of his heartbeat. Minutes passed. He watched as two scouts crossed the ridge in hurried strides, their armor slick with sweat like oil. They barked rapid instructions into their comm units, occasionally glancing over their shoulders as if expecting an unseen threat to materialize. They looked smaller now, diminished not by size but by the collapse of their certainties. Zack waited until they vanished into the distance before rising from the water, the dripping moss falling silently away from his suit. The extraction point was close, a narrow clearing where the canopy thinned enough for a stealth shuttle to descend. As he approached, he felt a fleeting tug of fatigue edging into his awareness. The mission had demanded absolute focus, but exhaustion was a luxury he allowed only after safety was secured. When the shuttle finally pierced the treetops, its hull shimmered like a pale mirage. Its hatch opened with a soft hiss, and a familiar figure emerged. Director Rios met his gaze with a mixture of relief and solemn pride. "It's done," she said, though the galaxy already knew. Every network had erupted with footage of the impossible strike, the moment an unshielded human projectile pierced alien defenses. Zack stepped aboard, his movements steady despite the weight of the jungle still clinging to him. "Message delivered," he replied. Rios nodded. "And received." As the shuttle ascended, the last traces of the alien jungle receded beneath him. Zack finally allowed a slow breath to escape, his thoughts calming into quiet clarity. The aliens had challenged Earth with mockery. He had answered with precision. Not rage, not spectacle, precision. The kind that revealed truth with a single, undeniable cut. He rested his rifle across his knees, listening to the hum of the engines. One shot. He murmured, more to himself than anyone else. One message. And far beyond the jungle, the galaxy listened.